Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Advancement Center and the World of Magic and Miracles. As I continue to read The Magic of Life, Volume 2 by Robert Young, The Next Step. And we're down to our last two chapters. And today I'll be reading chapter 21. Willie woke early and looked out his window to see the Jeremy slipping gently into the water. For a moment he thought he was late, and the sinking feeling in his stomach made him jump out of bed and look for the time. He sat on the side of the bed and shook his head. The pressure of the past few days was starting to show. The clock was right beside him, was the brightest light in the room. 4:44 a.m. was clearly too early for everyone except the shipyard. Willie felt tired, but there was something holding his attention that he could not get hold of. His dreams had been intense, but he could not recall any detail that he could work with. The progress that had been made on the specifications for the upgrade of the Michael was far beyond everyone's expectation. There was still something missing. In the semi-darkness of his room, Willie gradually became active, his mind still searching as he proceeded with packing, ready for his 8 a.m. departure. And it wasn't long before he was completed and heading out the door. He was much too early, but nothing entered his mind except for the continuous search for something that seemed to be missing or out of place. The ship was settled at the departure berth by the time Willie entered the dock. The security guard welcomed him. "Good morning, Mr. Broltage. Your brother and Mr. Smithers are waiting for you in the Slipways manager's office on your right at the end of the walkway. Have a good day, sir." Willie almost jumped out of his skin as the message shook him back to reality. "Thank you, Jeffrey," he said quickly. "Have they been here long?" "Several hours, sir. Mr. Smithers just asked me to contact you, but you were already walking towards me. They are expecting you." Willie's already busy brain went into turmoil as he headed towards the office. The smell of fresh coffee took his attention as he approached the office, and his head cleared immediately. The shining faces of John and Heinrich met him as he opened the door. "Ah, just in time for coffee," exclaimed John. "We thought we would have to wait for you. What made you so early?" "I have no idea," Willie replied. "Something just kept eating at me, and here I am. What about you two? Why are you here?" John and Heinrich looked at one another for a moment until Heinrich lifted his eyebrows and took the lead. "After we left you yesterday," Heinrich said slowly as if he was finding his way, "we went with Bill to say hello to Suzanne and the children." John handed Willie a cup of coffee and indicated a suitable chair for him to be seated, as both he and Heinrich did the same. "I think it was Jamie that started it all," he said cautiously as he looked at John. "She was playing with her fairy friend, and without even stopping, she told Suzanne that me and Bill were needed in Norwich. We didn't take much notice, but Suzanne took it seriously and looked in on Norwich to see what was happening." Heinrich sipped on his coffee and looked out the window as he continued. "You know how I told you about suddenly finding myself back in the home of Willem whenever Sally needed me?" Heinrich waited for Willie's acknowledgement. "Well, this time, Suzanne took us all and landed us in the lobby of the Olsen Plaza. Not this one, the one in Norwich. We had different clothes, and it was around midday." Heinrich's amazement carried Willie away from all his thoughts, and he sat back waiting for the remainder of the story. News of the release of the travel restrictions to the mainland had leaked out somehow, and everyone wanted to use their equity in the Pacific line to take their family overseas. You can imagine the load on Henry and the others. Nothing is ready, and the Pacific Rose is on her way through the vortex right now. Heinrich looked at Willie as if he had completed the story. "You can't stop there," Willie exclaimed. "What did you do? How did you end up there?" Oh, yes, said Heinrich. I sometimes lose track when I have been traveling. Have you any more coffee, John? John quickly jumped up and filled Heinrich's cup. A nod from Willie answered John's unspoken question as he immediately emptied the pot into Willie's cup. It was all so real, Heinrich continued. We were there for 4 days, helping Norwood get itself into order and arranging for more transport around the island. We arrived back a couple of hours ago and haven't stopped planning what we will have to do to stitch everything together when we really arrive in Norwood. Willie, John interjected, our plans have been accelerated, and the boat shed on the island is now flourishing. You will need your running shoes on when we land. It is time to bridge the gap between the dimensions and let everything fly. Suzanne seems to think that everything will fall into line as long as we get there an hour before we had previously planned. Heinrich added, the crew will be ready in 15 minutes. Are you ready? Sure, replied Willie. What about Bill and Suzanne? Bill is on board and Suzanne will meet us whenever we need by transporting to Carmel's place, just as Sally used to do years ago. Willie's mind became clear, and without hesitation, he gathered his luggage and headed towards the Jeremy. Bill watched eagerly from the bridge as Willie headed towards the gangway. He always looked forward to traveling with Willie, and his connection had grown over the past few encounters to where he could almost feel everything that Willie felt when he was focused on working at sea. He waited for Willie to look up and gave a quick wave of acknowledgement as Willie turned to board the ship. Willie was in a particularly happy mood as he stepped onto the deck. He hadn't realized how much he missed the prospect of being at sea. Hello, Willie, Bill's voice boomed from the port bridge wing. Welcome aboard. Bill sounded as if he was the captain of the vessel. He had a unique sound of authority that came with being an independent fisherman. Is she ready to go? Willie's voice boomed back to the bridge. As ready as she can be, replied Bill. Come on up, and we can go through the check sheet. Willie smiled and immediately stepped through the open port side bulkhead. The corridor was well lit, and the new panel work gave the cabin space a professional look that Willie was proud to see. He remembered when he first presented the check sheet to Bill and laughed loudly as he entered the bridge. What's so funny? Bill exclaimed without looking up from the chart table. Don't you think I know how to read this stuff? Bill, 2 weeks ago you had no idea, Willie said as he continued to laugh, and now you want to go through the checklist. Bill remained focused as he completed his last plot on the chart of Sydney Harbor and entered the headings on the check sheet. One completed check sheet for your approval, Bill said with a pleased look on his face. I have mapped us all the way to Norwich, allowing for winds and a small amount of heavy weather. We should arrive around 4:30 p.m. tomorrow. Willie shook his head slowly. Bill never ceased to amaze him. He sat down at the chart table and joined Bill in the most interesting appraisal he had ever experienced. The data that Bill had collected and added to the sheet included tank soundings, fuel and oil analysis, cool room readings, water tests, food and drink storage, and meal allocations. What crew do we have? Willie finally announced. Just Fred, Bill replied. Everyone else returned on the Pacific Rose. So you did the warm through on the engines and started the auxiliaries? Willie said with surprise. I helped the dockyard foreman, Bill admitted sheepishly, and he helped me prepare the checklist. I knew it. Something smelled fishy. Willie jumped up from the table. You have never seen some of this stuff before, and Fred wouldn't have a clue. You let me think you did it by yourself. Bill could not hold back the laugh any longer, and he almost folded up on the floor when he saw Willie attempting to hold a serious look for as long as he could. The sound of the intercom shocked them both, and they held back the laughter a little to listen. Passengers and crew on board, all staff signed off, and away from the ship came the clear voice of the dockyard foreman, ready to remove the gangway. Willie moved quickly and took his place at the helm and pressed the intercom button. Clear to remove the gangway. Gangway, Willie answered calmly. The intercom went dead as the gangway plug was removed. Willie immediately switched to internal intercom, and Bill headed for the deck to attend to the mooring lines. We are about to get underway. Bill is on his way down. Fred, can you look after the aft line? Willie said in his normal, easygoing manner. Roger, Willie, came Fred's quick reply. Willie flicked the switch to transfer control to the port bridge wing and quickly checked that all the control panel indicators were normal before starting the thruster at zero pitch. The auxiliary diesel labored heavily for a moment, and then the familiar whir of the thrusters filled the air. In a well-practiced movement, Willie slipped across to the port control, activated the loudspeaker, and spoke as he scanned around the ship and checked the starboard monitor. All clear forward. Willie waited for Bill's signal. Bill held his hand up and indicated that there was a small craft off the starboard side. Willie adjusted his camera and waited for the boat to clear. All clear forward, Willie repeated. Bill's thumbs immediately went into the air. All clear aft, Willie called as he turned and waited for Fred's signal. Fred looked around carefully and then slowly lifted his thumb in the air. Let go of the forward line, Willie instructed as he skillfully eased the tension of the forward line with a slight movement of the thruster joystick. As the tension released, Bill skillfully flicked the line off the bollard and let it drop into the water. He watched as the dockyard attendants pulled the line onto the dock, then threw both hands into the air to signal all clear. Willie watched as the tension came off the aft line, and then at the critical moment, let go the aft line, Willie instructed. He watched Fred release the line and was careful not to move the vessel until the all-clear signal came from Fred. A quick glance towards Bill gave Willie the final clearance, and he skillfully engaged the thrusters and watched as the vessel moved sideways away from its berth. As Willie returned the thruster's joystick to its neutral position, his focus returned to the ship instruments. All clear on deck, he advised as his hand automatically reached out to turn off the loudspeaker. Here we go, he said to himself as he engaged both engines. Let us see how the new control works. He selected 8 knots on the speed regulator and switched to auto navigation control. The ship responded immediately and headed out into the open waters of the harbor. Playing again, Willie, John said jovially as he entered the bridge. It seems to respond well. Are you in auto? Willie turned quickly. It feels like a new boat, he said with a slight frown on his face. What else did you do to it? It has Bill's rudder modification, John said as he sat in his position beside Willie, and a few other things that we have been working on for some time. And what might that be? Said Willie as he looked closely at a small vessel attempting to pass on the port side. The engines changed pitch and the speed of the ship increased smoothly and left the small vessel behind. Has this thing got a mind of its own? Exclaimed Willie as he looked closely at the controls. Nah, just GPS. We are outside the 8-knot limit, replied John. When you are in the auto, it selects my new program called optimal cruising. It decides the best speed and direction. It even keeps clear of all vessels around you. Not bad, hey? What do you mean, just GPS? That is brilliant, Willie replied. What other simple things have you added? We lightened the superstructure and cabin paneling, increased the size of the inlets for the water cooling pumps, replaced the stabilizers with a new dynamic trim stabilizer system, strengthened the hull, and added load cell monitoring to control speed and direction in heavy seas. John looked up for a moment and then continued. I did improve the radar blanking, and we now have visual monitoring just like the Pacific Rose. He hesitated again. I think that is about it. I will let you know if I remember anything else. The intercom squawked in its usual fashion to indicate communication from below. Breakfast is ready, Fred announced cheerfully. Clear the chart table. We will be up in a moment. Heinrich and Bill arrived first. each carrying a special food container designed for Willie and John. Fred followed with his bag of utensils and a steaming stainless steel platter that is usually used in the galley to keep the bacon and eggs warm. Bill placed Willie's food container in the rack beside him and immediately returned to the chart table to help Fred with the steaming platter. Fred handed the platter to Bill and took a light blue cloth from his bag to cover the table. Within a few minutes, the table was set and the content of all the containers was laid out on the table. Willie maintained his position at the helm, and John joined the others at the chart table. Fred served everyone, including Willie, and they all partook of their first meal on their long and exciting trip home. And that ends chapter 21, which is where I will stop. And when I return, we will read the final chapter, chapter 22 of The Magic of Life, The Next Step, Volume 2 by Robert Young. And until then, wishing you a perfect life, perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.